We've talked about music theory before, and we're back to talk about it again. Still about melodies. By the way, if you want to see the last video, it's going to be linked up above. Last time we talked about intervals, and we also talked about the different types of melodies, but we can dive into melodies a little bit deeper. We can break them down into distinct sections, and this would refer to phrase structure. So each section is broken down into individual phrases, and it'll create a sense of order and coherence with the music. So usually a phrase is going to be 4 or 8 bars long, and you can think of them as complete musical thoughts, or sentences, phrases, whatever. Diving into phrase structure a little bit deeper, we can look at the cadences, and the cadence is just the ending of the phrase that's going to provide the closure, so like resolving what you've said. And right here we have the authentic cadence, which just means we're going from the 5 to the 1, and this gives a really strong sense of resolution. Then there's the half cadence. This just means it's going to end on the 5, and this will create some anticipation. Then we've got the plagal cadence. I don't think that's how it's pronounced. That just means you're going from the 4 to the 1 at the end of your phrase, and it's going to have a softer resolution. Then we've got the deceptive cadence. This one's a little sneaky because it's going to surprise you by avoiding some expected resolution by going up to the 6th from the 5th. Now, when we look at phrases together, we can have a period, and that's just where we have the first phrase set up a question for the second phrase, and then the second phrase is going to answer it, so that just means call and response. So here we have a really basic example of this, and pretty much our call is ending on a half cadence, so it's going to end by creating some anticipation, and then to resolve that, we're ending on an authentic cadence. Really basic, but that can be used to make your melodies a lot more catchy, as well as provide some structure and form to your melody. Makes it feel like a dialogue. This one's a little bit weird, but we need to talk about the contour to your melody. And this just means the overall shape of your melody. Whether it descends, ascends, or just remains static, it plays a big part in the emotional component to your melody. So first up, we've got an ascending contour. That just means it's going to be going up, and it's going to be creating a sense of building excitement or energy. Opposite to that, we've got descending contour. A lot of the times it's going to convey an emotion of sadness, and it can give some resolution. Then we've got arch contour. That just means it's rising to a peak and then falling back down. And this mimics natural speech patterns, and because of that, it often feels complete and balanced. Next up, we've got wave contour, and this just means the melody is alternating between rising and then falling. And because of this, it's going to create some interest and complexity within your melody. So if you put all of that together, you can use your melody to guide the listeners to different emotions, and a well put together melody contour will make your music a whole lot more engaging and emotional. A lot of times I've talked about needing to build tension and release that tension in your melodies, and that's because these are fundamental concepts to making great melodies. Think of it like a story. You want to build up to that conflict and then resolve it. And there's a lot of different ways that you can build and release tension, and one of my favorite ways is dissonance. So if we have a C chord here and we play a B, so it's going to create some dissonance between the C and the B because of the major 7th interval. Again, I explained intervals in the last melody music theory video, which you can check out up above. And the reason it creates dissonance is because the B wants to resolve up to the C or down to the A, just to create some sense of stability. Another way of building tension is through your harmonic progression. That just means your chord progression. So you can use chords that naturally lead to resolution. So for example, this G7 chord here creates tension because of the tritone between B and F, and that resolves nicely back to C. But you can build tension more specifically in your melodies by using notes that create a sense of continuation or expected resolution. So we already talked about how this B wants to go up to the C or down to the A to resolve, but by ending on the B and not having that resolution, it's going to create some tension. You can also use rhythm to build tension, and this is why rhythm is so important to your melodies. And all you need to do is just delay a downbeat, and that can build up some tension. The explanation for that is you're building the anticipation rhythmically as opposed to melodically. So the listener is going to expect the beat to come, but it's not going to come quite yet. Now there's 4 main ways that tension is typically released, like that B note we talked about earlier. It resolves up to the C, and that's going to be a point of consonance. So you can use consonance just like you can use dissonance, but instead of building tension, you can use it to resolve tension. The same is true for that harmonic resolution, because just like that G7 example, we resolve to the C major chord here, and that's going to be a big point of consonance. And you can resolve your rhythmic tension too. It's probably the easiest thing to resolve, because you just have to play a note on a strong downbeat to bring back some stability to your rhythm. So we've talked about one melody, but what about when you want to have more than one, like 2? That would be when you need to consider counterpoint. And counterpoint just refers to the interplay between those multiple melodies you may have. So counterpoint is made up of independent melodies, a careful balance of consonance and dissonance, and a smooth logical progression from one note to another in both the voices. That's called voice leading. And there's also 5 types of counterpoint. First type is note against note, and this pretty much just means we have one note for one note in each of the 2 melodies. And the reason this works is because the 2 melodies are moving together in consonant intervals. The next type of counterpoint is where we have 2 notes to 1. We've got the first voice here, there's 4 notes. Second voice, there's 8 notes. 2 to 1. And because of that, the faster moving voice, it's going to add some rhythmic interest while still maintaining that harmonic consonance that we want. It's not that complicated because the next type we have is 4 notes to 1. It just creates a more flowing and intricate texture. And it's really important to remember that we are maintaining that beautiful consonance. The 4th kind of counterpoint involves syncopation, and that just goes back into the rhythmic tension we talked about. So pretty much you're just using the syncopation, the delays in rhythm, to create some tension and also add some dynamic interest to your melody. And if you take all 4 of those previous types of counterpoint and combine them together, you get the 5th type of counterpoint called florid counterpoint. It's the most complex and free form because it's mixing rhythmic values and syncopation. If you want to take your melody to that next level, you need to understand ornamentation. First and foremost, we got trills. So a trill is just a rapid alliteration between 2 notes, and those 2 notes need to be side by side, like the C and the D here. And this adds excitement and a sense of virtuosity. Another way you can decorate your melody is with some grace notes. And that pretty much just means you have this tiny little note that precedes the main note. And this will add a subtle embellishment that's often used for expressive purposes. Something else you can do to decorate your melody is use turn. So for example, for C here, we might have a turn like this, which is just a sequence of notes that embellishes a single note. And because you're doing more, it adds a flourish to your melody. And finally, we have mordant, which is a single rapid alliteration between a note and then the note below or above. So if you put all of that together, you can make really complex, beautiful sounding melodies that have a nice decorative touch to them and resonate some good emotion. If you want to keep learning about music theory, I'll link a video somewhere on the side here, or maybe just a whole playlist. I don't know. Check it out.